this skill set of emotional intelligence is the crux
Sure.
of this function because it ensures long-term success.
David, welcome.
Adam, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you, man.
We're here.
Is this episode 1?
Episode 1.
Not 51?
Not 51. We'll get there
Okay.
one day. 51 weeks from now.
Excellent.
Yeah. So episode 1 of the RevOps Recruiters podcast.
That's right. We are your hosts, Adam and David from RevSearch.
Yeah. And our mission is to really provide insights and best practices around finding, hiring, and retaining top revenue operations talents.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of folks out there that are putting out great content around what it means to be a revenue operations practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best practices, things you should be doing and thinking about. And that's not necessarily our forte. We spend most of our time working on helping to find the right folks that we can connect with companies that really need those revenue operations leaders. And so that's why we want to focus on what it looks like to find those folks, what it looks like to hire those folks, and what it looks like to retain those folks.
That's right. There's definitely a gap in the market, and I think we'll be exploring this and journeying through this entire function from a talent perspective to help shed some light on some of these areas because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, for sure. So what are we going to jump into today?
Yeah, today we will focus on some key ingredients that we see that are necessary for success in the revenue operations function.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a closer look at the profile, some of the hard skills and soft skills that we've seen as critical.
Yeah, I love it. Those are critical. So, when you think about a recipe, right? If you're baking cookies, there are a bunch of different ways you could bake cookies, but oftentimes you got to have sugar, you got to have flour, you got to have vanilla. There's certain things that have to be there. Yeah. And so when we think about revenue operations leaders, we've seen things that pretty much have to be there for every role. And that's what we want to dive in today. So we're going to break those into hard skills and soft skills. So let's start with the hard skills first. So what's that first hard skill that you've observed that we look for when we're vetting talent for revenue operations leaders?
Yeah. So the role itself is really complex. It spans many different areas in the business. It's the entire blueprint behind an organization.
Sure.
Is revenue operations. So there's lots of complexity and different things we look for within that to really make that blueprint come alive.
Right.
When we look at hard skills, we want to start in the systems bucket.
Okay.
So systems, we see the CRM as being, the system of record in most of these organizations. We look at where is the data housed? Well, it's usually housed at the central source, which is a CRM.
Right.
Then there's other systems in the tech stack that are integrated into this CRM, but that's where we start. And a lot of our clients, they look for help in that area first because it's usually where the most that's the messiest area in an organization. That's where the data is housed. And so we look at a minimum, we want an admin level of experience in the CRM. There's a couple of different types of CRMs out there, right? The top two are probably what we see is HubSpot, our HubSpot and Salesforce.
Sure. Yeah.
But within that, in order to enter into this role and actually build out that data infrastructure, we need someone who can build it from scratch. There's many different scenarios. There's sometimes overhaul, sometimes it's rolling out, sometimes it's migrating from one CRM to another.
Right.
But we need an individual that can think through how do we map the CRM, these processes to give us the data that we're looking for. And that takes admin level experience.
Yeah. I love that. And many times the companies we're working with or the candidates that we're even talking to, they're asking, do I have to be certified for this role? Certifications are great. I think those are certainly helpful. That shows that you definitely have
validate.
Validate. Great word. But it's definitely not a requirement. What we're really looking for is what have you done? Mm-hmm. Have you done integrations with other, if the CRM is almost like the central nervous system of the tech stack, have you done the integrations with the different tools? Do you have experience working with the automation tools that are built into these CRMs, whether that's on HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever tool you're using? Do you know how to move data cleanly in and out of that? And so we're just really looking for that experience there. So our conversations look like we're talking to candidates and finding out, what have you done? What problems have you solved? What have you faced, and how'd you solve that problem? Tell us a little bit about that story. Right. And that's what our companies are looking for when they're looking for a RevOps leader on that side. So I love that CRM kind of, or the administration, the management of that, of the tech stack as one function. So what's the next bucket hard skill that we want to talk about?
So when we look at the system, then we look at, all right, what's housed in the system of record? It's data.
Yeah.
That's when we move into the next bucket, which is the data analyst skill set. Data, we know this, it's the new currency, it's everything. We've got all these systems that are housing data, that are actively mining data. So these data sets are growing as companies grow.
Right.
Because their digital buyer journeys, everything's changed, especially after this COVID wave, where nobody really wants to talk to anyone in the buyer process. And so we've got digital journeys, and there's systems that are behind these customer journeys that are all capturing data.
Sure.
If you don't have someone who can tell you what this data is saying, it's just going to become a massive pile of data, right? Yeah. And in most cases,
it's just not valuable.
It's not valuable.
If you can't extract the insights out of it, there's no real value to it.
That's it. And so we need the RevOps leader to be able to look at the data, analyze the data, and provide those insights to the C-suite.
Yeah.
On day one, that looks very different than on day 90 to 120 to 360.
Sure.
But it's coming in and really quickly being able to provide visibility, because that's most of the time what leaders are asking us is, when can I start to understand what this data is saying?
Yeah.
What is the why behind the data? They need to be able to tell the story of what the data is saying quickly, because ultimately that informs where the business needs to go.
Yeah.
Right. It's building that roadmap, looking at the map and saying, based on what we're seeing here today, we need to make changes here and here and head into this direction.
Sure. That skill set is such a big and important part of RevOps leaders, right? So I think about data, and you've got to have the ability to really first work with it. So many times RevOps leaders, if they're the first one into the organization, they're moving data from spreadsheets that exist somewhere on a server. They're moving them from Google Sheets. Then all of a sudden the company does an acquisition, and there's this other entity that has their own set of data that needs to come in, right? So they're working with data on a regular basis. But really where we see them providing the most value is in, like you said, once we have good data, being able to look at it and say, okay, what is our data telling us?
Yeah.
RevOps leaders need to help organizations move from making decisions based on how they feel to making decisions based on what the data actually says.
That's right.
Not what do I feel about customers, or what do I feel about our product, or what do I feel about anything that exists inside of our pipeline, but what does the data actually tell us around the data? And so they've got to have that skill set to be able to work with data on a regular basis.
And that's visualize it too, right?
Yeah,
that's another key part.
Yeah, because you can't just know it, and this person's usually pretty good in Excel or pretty good in some kind, but they've got to be able to bring it in and communicate it to other people.
Yeah. And
if they can't do that, then that's gonna be tough to move the ball forward.
Right. And another point here is, we're not just looking for an admin, right? And we see this all over LinkedIn, people posting and trying to establish that the revenue operations leader is not just a tactical admin, because a tactical admin can pull a report and hand a leader a report.
Yeah.
And so, but then what? And they look at it. I think about this myself. I look at data and I'm like, what is it saying?
Sure.
Right. And so it helps. It's so valuable to have someone that goes, let me manipulate this data and help organize this data and provide you with those true insights that you're looking for.
That's great. So 2 buckets we talked about. Third bucket on the hard skills.
Third bucket kind of, enables you to actually get things done, which is the project management skill set. So there's different ways you can up your skill level there. You can go out and get a certification, right? There's lots of programs out there. There's different methodologies. I mean, we see it across Agile, Lean.
Sure.
You can go get a PMP, but the bottom line is, can you get things done through your own framework of staying on top of projects?
Sure.
Right. That could be done through a system, not just a scratch piece of paper. Right.
Sticky notes everywhere.
But staying organized is such a key to success in this role, because you've got so many short-term projects, you've got long-term projects,
Right.
right? This lofty goal of where we want to be with this revenue engine, and then there's the reality of where we are today. And the thing that makes you great in this role is you can keep your eyes on that long-term goal, but still be able to figure out what needs to be done today, and managing these projects and requests, and building a system around it to properly move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've watched all kinds of RevOps leaders go into organizations, and because they're talented individuals, oftentimes they get stuff just bombarded with requests. And some of those requests are, hey, this thing's broken, we need help with it. And some of those requests are, hey, we've got this idea.
Yeah.
And those things are constantly coming at these leaders. And if you don't have a process to keep track of everything, to be able to say, here are the priorities, here are the things that we're focusing on over the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to negotiate that with leaders when they have a request, I mean, it's hard to say to a CEO when they come to you with a request, hey, here's all the other things. But if you've got a system, you can present to them, these are all the things I'm working on right now. And so you've got to have some way of managing all of that and keeping track of it. So I love it. That's 3 buckets. There's other ones for sure, but those are 3 big buckets on the hard skill that really, if you're looking to be a RevOps leader, you got to have these as some of the core functions from a hard skill standpoint. But then there's this whole other set of soft skills, right? That are the ones that we see are the skills that differentiate the best from everyone else.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of these soft skills. What's one of those key soft skills that you've observed that's just critical for these RevOps leaders?
We call this bucket the EQ leadership bucket.
Yeah.
This rounds out the entire revenue operations profile.
Sure.
This makes the total package. If you've got a leader that is extremely strong on the system side, the process side, the project management side, having a strong EQ to influence those above you and those cross-functionally from you, right? Your peers and the C-suite, this skill set of emotional intelligence is the crux of this function, because it ensures long-term success.
Yeah.
It really helps an individual to not push others or force others into change, or simply throw new projects at a C-level leader and say, we need to do these things. But it's taking a step back, being able to see the organization, the leaders within that organization, the different personalities,
Sure.
right? Personas. Talk about personas. Look at the entire C-suite. They're all different.
They're all different people. Yeah.
And they all have different wants and needs and honestly experiences.
Sure.
Some of them may have some legacy mindsets in their function. And so you're actively navigating and negotiating very complex relationships. And so if you look at the first part of this, the playbook, right? If you look at the revenue operations playbook, and you mentioned something earlier at the end there with project management of throwing something at a C-level leader, it really has to be more proactive. And so we have this management of expectations early on, making sure that we educate, right? It's like educating a buyer, educating along the way and pulling those with you,
right?
Leading with value, leading with the why. And a lot of times letting others take ideas or having others get that light bulb moment.
Inception. You're planting your idea in the mind of someone else.
Dream within a dream.
That's right.
And so the EQ is something that RevOps leaders, quite honestly, have to work on. There's lots of ways to assess this, right? There's different, but it boils down to how well do you know yourself? And when there's criticism that comes, right, can you look inward, and how in tune are you with your own emotions? Because the reality is, the first uncomfortable situation, you push back and you try to force your agenda. Yeah, it's probably going to break trust.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love this idea of EQ. We've got all these other talents and skills that are needed, but we've all experienced that person that was very smart, very intelligent, but they couldn't read the scenario. They couldn't understand the situation. And for these leaders, many times the roles that we're placing, it's the very first RevOps leader in the organization. So they don't have folks underneath them that they're leading.
Yeah.
They're having to influence out to other key stakeholders in other departments and influence up.
Yeah.
And in order to effectively do that, they have to possess a strong amount of emotional intelligence. Because like you said, you mentioned it before, you're communicating to the CEO, the CFO, the CRO, the C, put whatever letters you want after it, right? And many of the times they're asking the same question and the answer at the root is the same, but how you deliver it to each one of those individuals might be very, very different. And you've got to be able to do that. And so, the emotional intelligence is a huge part of this.
I would say another one kind of in that soft skills bucket is the problem solver, taking initiative, not being an order taker, but being proactive and a leader, right? Having this presence. I think that we see this in our candidates, the individuals that get things done and can actually drive change. They have this next level sort of leadership. What do you call it? It's like you get that sense just talking to this individual that they've got influence. They've got influence. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. They've got influence, because ultimately that's how you drive change and trying to work across this entire journey, this entire business. I mean, you might not just have C-level individuals that you're working with. You might have, a director of customer success that is your main blocker. Well, how do you interface with this individual? It's going to look different than your CFO, right? And it's so,
I love this. So really, when we're identifying leaders, and so many times the hiring managers that we're working with, we talk about the hard skills. We say, okay, what's the greatest need? Is it cleaning up data? Is it tech stack integration? We identify that, but then we go almost immediately into talk to us about the challenges that maybe you faced, or talk to us about change management. Talk to us about how on board is the entire executive team? How on board are the other key stakeholders within the organization? Because that's so critical. And many times they're telling us, we're less worried about the hard skills, whether they've done this exact thing or not. We're really more concerned about the soft skills and whether they're going to be a good fit within our organization to help drive change and move us to where we need to go.
A true change agent, like a champion in the organization. That's what we look for in that soft skill set.
Yeah, I love it. David, thank you so much for what you shared here. I think we've laid out 4 good buckets for us to think through. So really appreciate what you've shared.
This is a blast. We're on a journey here, and come join us. Keep tuning in, right? This is just the beginning.
Just the beginning. The RevOps Recruiters podcast. So, excited to be on the journey with you, man.
Same here.